You can't really follow something that comes from inside unless it comes from inside. I had this internal unrest because I knew there was something else, but I didn't know what it was or where to look into finding it. And because I was living in my hometown doing dentistry like my mom used to do, so it was kind of a very predictable one-way path of life. So it took me a long time because I hadn't realized what it was. But what it did for me was that it led me to my decision to leave my home country, Greece, and move to the UK in pursuit of that thing. Took me into my 40s when I had that midlife awakening to really search deep and take it out of me.
Agi, my brother, welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Frank, I'm delighted to be here. It's an honor to be here speaking with you today. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Yeah, brother, we had a great conversation on your podcast a couple days ago, and I'm excited to flip the roles around and kind of dive into your headspace a little bit, kind of dive into your journey and see what kind of value we can bring to the audience and listeners here today. In preparing for this and researching for you, there was one thing in particular that really jumped out on me or to me about your bio. Can you unpack what a knowledge broker is and what he does? I've never seen this anywhere before.
Yes, and it's a great question to begin with, and it is something that catches attention. I originally coined the term from something that Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi were doing. It was a program that they were helping people to get the message out there and create a knowledge business. However, how I translate it personally for me, a knowledge broker is someone who will collect the knowledge that is already out there, or maybe add some as well, but present it in a way that it is not just knowledge anymore. It is something that is implementable. So distilling in a way the knowledge into something that is actionable. That is, in a way, the way I see it. Of course, different people would say different things about that, but for me, that's how I interpret it for myself anyway.
Yeah, I love that so much, man. And it kind of runs in parallel to something I've said a lot about, myself. I think we're all, born with innate gifts and talents. I think, that there's things that we should, and potentially, a calling within our life. And I've always said, I think for me, one, whether you want to call it gift or skill set or trait that I possess, is the ability to process a lot of high level information and then extract out the patterns within it and articulate it back through a deliverable, right? Like, obviously, that's why I'm doing podcasting. That's why I write programs. That's why I do coaching. I feel for me, and that's why I wanted to kind of ask you about this. Like, I'm probably a similar person to a knowledge broker. Do you feel that this for you is something that you were kind of innately born with, the ability to process and then re-articulate this information, or is it something you've had to develop in your own life?
I've never been asked that before. I'm not sure. Maybe I had it to some extent. And if you asked me a few years ago, I had no idea that I had this kind of because I never did that or never expressed it in such a way. But I think it is a combination, and I think with most things in life, even if you have an ability and an innate talent to do something, you still need to work on it and practice it and craft it in order to become better. So it's a little bit of probably combination of two. But the last few years, especially since I started doing my podcast, then I realized that more and more that I do have this ability, or sometimes I use the word superpower, which a few years ago would sound like a very crazy or even arrogant thing to say. But I think it's what you said earlier. Each of us has it. You don't want to name it superpower. You can call it something else, your unique talent or your reason for being in the world. But you have to cultivate it and express it. And I kind of jumped to a different direction there, but I started with your question.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, brother. And lean into the superpower, right? Like, this is the superhuman life. I believe we're all born with a superpower, unique gift, divine skills, divine calling on our life. So that's what I'm excited to really kind of bring out of you here today. So you mentioned you've been running the podcast here for just a couple of years. What I think would be really valuable, though, Agi, is if we can kind of go back. Maybe to, I know there's been some, very instrumental points in 2017, but even earlier in your life, in particular, one meeting when you were in dentistry school. So can you talk about that meeting, that individual, and how that kind of changed the trajectory of your life forever?
Oh, I see. I suppose you mean that connection that I had with my friend in the university. That's amazing. I hadn't. Yeah, I was in dentistry school, maybe 19 years old, and I became best friends with a guy, and we would play video games, go out, have fun, go after girls. It was a great time. And after a couple of years, I saw him change very much because he felt a very strong inner calling, a spiritual calling, uh, uh, to become a spiritual person. At that time, of course, he couldn't express it like that. He didn't know what it was, but he felt a very strong calling inside of him, which eventually, and after long, it was not an easy thing to do, to break from all his, let's say, programming, family, country, university, etc. But he followed his heart, and he went to Siberia initially and trained in shamanism. And then he started traveling the world. And in terms of how he changed me, because in the beginning he would come back to his home where we were standing, and I would see him. I started seeing his transformation, and some of the things he was telling me was some really deep spiritual knowledge, which was completely, at that time anyway, unavailable to me. I had no idea about those things. And listening to him, and remember, he's my best friend, all right? So when you have your best friend telling you some things like that, I kind of absorbed them as a sponge. There was no filter for me to doubt anything that he was saying. So that really changed very much my both my way of thinking about what life is and what what our mind does, but also the concept of spirit or the spiritual concepts, not in the the traditional sense of, because I was grown up as a Christian Orthodox in Greece. I was never religious as such, and there was a point that I was really not caring at all about, as a 18, 19-year-old guy. The last thing in my mind was, God or religion. However, with that influence, I did get into not religion but spirituality, and really seeing and understanding some things about life. Really, it really changed me, Frank, to much more. I used to say that second from my parents, this was the biggest influence in my life that really changed my direction. And thank you for asking me that question. It's been a long time since I talked about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I definitely want to maybe get a little bit more into, what were maybe some of the changes that you felt and saw in him. I know that you said he kind of changed the way that you were thinking, but what was it maybe about him? Was it like did he grow a mustache and have a new haircut, or was it just a different energy, or like did you just feel a different presence around him? Can you kind of articulate maybe a little bit more specifically about what you felt and saw change within him?
Yes, he had a calmness that was radiating. That's one thing, and he had a very a strength of character. So he would speak, he would look you in the eye, and you would get it. I mean, there was no hesitation. He was very strong at character, and of course, via the trainings and whatever he was doing, he became that person. So that was very something to admire. But he did have that kindness, that calmness, that and that was compared to how I remember him earlier, well, he used to be calm anyway, but I'm not talking about this same calmness. I mean that calmness that you can feel it, when you are in someone's presence and you can sense, I like being around this
Peace,
person.
right?
Yes, yes. I'm trying to think if there were, I'm sure there were many more others, you know, traits, but I realized seeing him that, you know what, if he can do it, I also, or others also, can do it. And do it, I mean, break free from the mold or the path of your life, which is maybe not entirely directed by you, maybe by your upbringing or your parents, and your life seems to be going in a certain direction. He made me realize that that's not set in stone. You can, if you want, change it and follow what it is inside you. It's not easy, but you can. And doing it really strengthens you as a process.
Yeah, that is so beautiful, man. But I know with you, so you were I don't think you weren't forced into dentistry, but it was kind of like something where you were kind of pushed into a particular profession and pathway. And then obviously we know now you've pivoted, you've completely changed industries, you've gone from working in the dental field, running practice, to now podcasting, knowledge broker, coaching, like all the great things that you have going on. But what I'm hearing you say is it was really that like moment in your life that probably has what led you to where you're doing today. But I'm curious because you stayed in dentistry for a while. So why I guess did you not change course of direction then and there, and it took you another 20 plus years down the road to really begin to step into, I guess, what has now become your calling?
I think the answer is very simple because at that time I had no idea what the calling was. So it's you can't really follow something that comes from inside unless it comes from inside. So I just carried on with, I had this internal unrest, shall we say, as a result of that, because I knew there was something else, but I didn't know what it was or where to look into finding it. And because I was living in my hometown, doing dentistry like my mom used to do, so it was kind of a very, let's say, predictable and one way path of life. So it took me a long time because I hadn't realized what it was. But what it did for me over the, let's say, 5 or 7 years afterwards was that it led me to my decision to leave my home country, Greece, and move to the UK in pursuit of that thing, which I didn't know what it was, but something was telling me that you're not going to find it here in Greece. Go to England. That's of course that's an oversimplifying way of expressing what was going on, but yeah, to partially the answer to your question was, yeah, because I hadn't found it. It took me into my 40s when I had that, what they say, the midlife awakening, or the midlife, I want crisis in a way, to really search deep and take it out of me, discover it.
Yeah. I mean, those are two very different words, right? Those are two different experiences, an awakening and a crisis. Like I'm like, whoa, which one is it?
One brings the other, or
So
can bring the other.
okay, so talk about that then though. What was the moment of clarity or awakening for you, and how did that, set you on the path and trajectory that you're on now?
The crisis was after in 2015 when I had finished a master's degree in aesthetic dentistry, and instead of feeling really motivated, after all that, I felt very empty, confused, unmotivated, and I started wondering what's wrong with me. So at that time I had just hit 40 as well, so it kind of one thing led to the other, and the crisis was internal. There was no external crisis. Internally I was feeling that there is something seriously wrong with my life. It's not really going where I wanted to go, and the worst thing was at that time that I had no idea what that thing was. So it's great to realize that, you know what, I'm not happy with what there is right now. But then, so what is it that I would like to? So that led me to my journey of personal development, self-exploration, that, you know, took me down the path of knowing myself, knowing who I am, in my mind, in my heart, in my body, and yeah, that in terms of the crisis that you ask, then the change happened during the years. Of course, there were some big catalysts, like the one you mentioned about 2017, where I went to a Tony Robbins event and things changed. But it is a journey. Of course, there are some bigger milestones along the way and some smaller ones, but it has been an ongoing journey of personal development, a journey to. I'm looking at it as a journey to self mastery, Frank. And you know, if when I first said that phrase out loud, I got scared at myself. How am I going to do that? But it's going. It is a journey. It is a journey. So, and I enjoy
Yeah,
very
yeah, I
much.
love that. Obviously, working in the the addiction space and industry. This podcast starting. The first 10 to 20 episodes, we really focus on addiction recovery. We've had a lot of rock bottom moments, right? We've had a lot of people that have been at crisis points within their life, and that's what kind of opens up the spiritual awakening, or that's kind of what is kind of transform and turns their life around. And while yours wasn't a rock bottom within addiction, there was a moment of crisis for you within your life, and that ultimately has led you to finding your calling and then doing all these great things that you're doing now. Do you believe that people can have an awakening, or they can have a moment of clarity and find their calling without having to go through that crisis? And if so, what can people do if maybe they're stuck in life right now? It's like, we're doing some good things, career, we're making money, we're happy, we didn't, but we're not really fulfilled, we're not really doing what we feel we're here to doing. So 2 questions here. And number one, do you feel people can experience that level of awakening and finding their calling without having to go through a crisis? And if so, what can people begin to do to begin to find themselves, or to begin to hear that calling, whether it's something coming internally or maybe externally from somewhere in the world?
Yeah, I'll start with the first one. It's hard to say for sure. I suppose that a crisis for sure can facilitate that very much, because it but without having it, yes, you could. I'm not sure under what circumstances. I suppose it would depend on someone's life. I think the important thing is to start looking. If you start looking, maybe it will come without the need of a crisis. You reminded me of that thing that Jim Rohn used to say, that people change either because of inspiration or out of desperation. So, in this analogy, the crisis is the desperation. So, I suppose if you are inspired enough to follow a path, you would get to that realization, hopefully, without needing to go through despair. Um, the second thing you asked me, again, I think it depends on the individual. What I would advise someone who, as you said, f- even though there is external success in their life, they feel not fulfilled inside. My words would be to, first of all, try to look inside and see what is it that yourself is, that your body, your mind, your heart is telling you. I'm saying that because many times that sense of being unfulfilled, that sense of, I would like to do something else, it's very vague, it's unclear, and unless we deliberately take the time and do some practices like maybe journaling or other things to bring it out from us, it is it is it is more difficult. So we have to, for each is different, it's different. So, but I think the common step is to look inside and realize, what is it that I want, actually, what is it that I really want. Go deep. And if you find that you find yourself saying something like, I would like to change my job. Okay, let me give you an example. go deeper and ask yourself, why do I want to do that? And when you give an answer to that, go even deeper. Keep on asking yourself why, because often we give very superficial answers, or they're not really the real motivators that drive us. So by keeping on asking why on our previous question, we can get to a more visceral, I would say, level of answers that might come up. So that's my, recommendation for someone to start asking why, what is it that I want to do, and keep on asking why I want to do that until something more intuitive comes up. And I think that it kind of, the answer does not come from the head anymore. It comes from deeper within, and that's usually the truth.
Why do you feel so many people have a hard time asking that question? Why, in your opinion, here? There's so many people, right? Like you said, it's like they give the, they give the canned answers. What do you want out of life? I want to make more money. What do you want? I want to have a big house. What do you want? I want to have a family. Like all these kind of first surface level ideas or theories or things that they're chasing. So why do you feel like that's like people always stop at that front, surface level stuff? And why do we struggle so much to get underneath some of these things and really get clear on what we really, really want? And that's what I loved about what you said there. It's like you started by saying, ask what you want. And you're like, no, what do you really want? So why is that something that is so difficult for so many people?
I suppose it can be scary for some people to really look at what they want. And I mean scary in the sense that if it is something that will really take you out of what you're doing and the way of life that you have, then that immediately triggers your primal brain that this is dangerous, this is risky. It takes you out of the comfort zone. So if say you look for the answers and you realize that I need to change my job or get divorced or whatever it is that you really know come from inside of you that is coming, it can be very scary to realize that, because it will change your life. And as you know very well, Frank, many people, the majority of people, I would say, do not like change. They like things to be safe, secure, predictable, because that is our animal nature, safety and security. But that's not what our human nature, our higher self is for. So yeah, I think the reason is fear of getting out of the comfort zone. And sometimes it's just plain ignorance, in the sense that, someone might just keep on complaining, oh, I don't like my life, but not really at a deeper level wanting to do anything about that. It's kind of a perpetual circle. So that's what comes to mind as possibilities.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, fear can, in one essence, be an incredible motivator, but on the other side of the spectrum, it can be a paralyzer, right? Like it'll cause us to just freeze within the moment. So, do you have any practices or daily habits or weekly rituals that you inject into your life, into your personal development, into your self care routine that is leaning and stepping into fear on like almost on a willingly basis? So what I'm asking is, do you have, like, I believe like when we put ourselves in scary situations, we willingly bring fear into our life. Then when we're faced with making decisions that are kind of like not ours, that could potentially be fearful or something that we'd be afraid of, like because we've been training ourselves that we actually enjoy the process of leaning into fear, this is a whole lot easier to do. So is there anything in your life or in your practice, or you coach and help people on with stepping into fear?
It's a very interesting question, because the way you say it, I don't have a daily thing to break free from some fear. And now that I'm saying that, maybe I should, because it is, I don't remember who was it that said that every day you have to face one of your fears. Anyway, it's a rather famous quote, which I don't remember it right now. But um, one of the things that I do personally is I've been following. I don't know if you're aware of Wim Hof method, who is the Iceman. So
Very
I
familiar. Yeah,
have
I got
been.
an ice barrel on the
Oh,
patio.
you do. All right. So yeah, that is cold exposure in particular, it is something that I have been doing. Actually, now that I say it, it is a part of my daily routine. Not stepping into a barrel with ice, but having cold showers. So I've been doing that for years, and it's never. I never at that time before I switch to cold, I'm looking for and say, oh, now it's my favorite time when I'm going to switch to cold. On the contrary, but it is that um, moment that you overcome that voice of comfort in your head that says, no, 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 don't do it this time. You can do it tomorrow. And then it gives me real pleasure when I put it into cold and that voice shut up because it can't do anymore. It's too cold for it to carry on. So it is a practice that it has helped me because, when you put yourself when you deliberately put yourself into a hardship, it really helps. But it trains your brain that when you need to take the difficult decision, you have more resilience, I would say, or maybe not resilience, but more inner strength to actually do it. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. And I think I saw you had Johnny Elsasser
Mm,
as a guest on your
mm.
show, and I'm friends with Johnny. Had him on probably a year and a half ago. And one of the things that really jumped out, Johnny is he's an army, he's a very high level military man. And one of the things that he said is like, why do the military, armed forces, special forces, SEALs, Rangers, why do they train at such an intense level? It's to prepare you, because in those moments of adversity and in the moments of real fight or flight, you don't step up to the level of your knowledge. You fall down to the level of your training, right? So when we train ourselves to seek discomfort, it's like we prepare ourselves mentally, emotionally, physically, that life is going to be hard. There's going to be adversity. There's going to be setbacks. There's going to be trials and tribulations and struggles. But if we can train ourselves through seeking discomfort, through stepping into fear, ice cold plunge, doing podcasting for me is something that I'm fearful of. Like, I'm going to say something stupid today and people are going to judge it. So every week I'm leaning into fear by literally having conversations and then sharing them with the world. So I love that. I love that so much.
Thank you for sharing that. I will say the same thing with the podcasts. It is. I do have this. This sense of butterflies, shall we say, in the stomach. It is not always. Sometimes it is, especially if you know the other person, it's very like a friendly chat. But most of the times, when you don't know the other person, that feeling of I have to hold the conversation, especially when when you are the host, you have to maintain or guide the conversation in a way that is valuable, is coherent, makes sense. So I can certainly relate to that as a method of stepping out of the
Yeah.
comfort zone as well. Yeah, sure.
I love that. You used this word here a little while back when you were talking about kind of what you're doing now, and one of the fears you stepped into was this path to self mastery, right? So I'm curious for you, like, how do you define self mastery, and is mastery of self something that we can actually achieve?
I'll start with the second one. Yes, I think we can. Because if I start by assuming that we can't achieve it, then it's pretty much, in a way, it's pointless. Why, why go there if it is not? Even though still that is open for debate. But yes, I think we can. Of course, it depends on really what definition we will give to mastery or to self mastery in that way.
Yeah. So what's yours?
For me, it would be, and I'm going to be a little bit broad here because there are more specific definitions, but broadly speaking, I would say to be all that I can be in all areas of my life. And I know that is kind of a general comment, but it really implies, first of all, to realize what does all that you can be, and that involves long introspection. And frankly, I really believe that it is a path, a journey, like our life. So the journey to self mastery is something that you go and you demonstrate. I don't see it as, there is a point in time or a level of, I have achieved self mastery. That's why I said that, yes, I believe we can, but not in the way of, it's somewhere out there and, okay, now I have achieved mastery. What next? It's not like that. It is something, it's like, when you train, you can't say at some point that now I have trained my body. My body is ready. I don't need to train anymore. It doesn't happen like that. It is similar. It is constantly ongoing. I don't know
Yeah.
what the end
So, I mean, it's,
destination is.
yeah, no, that's fantastic. It's a great, I mean, it's a great discussion to have, right? I mean, I think what I'm hearing you say is, I don't think it becomes a lifestyle. I'm not sure that's where you were going. I really feel you were kind of pointing to self mastery as a way of being. Like it is a presence that you hold. It is a way that you see yourself. It is a way that you see the world, and it is a way that you see yourself showing up in the world until the day that you die. Right? I don't know if you've ever read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. So she's kind of the research out of Stanford that really coined the term growth mindset. And I think most people have, at least in my opinion, they have growth mindsets a little bit misunderstood. For me, I think what I was able to understand and kind of pull out of Carol's book and then some of the other research I've done on it is that it's not the growth mindset is like we're seeking growth. Like I think most people want more than what they currently have right now. So if that would be the definition, almost everybody would be growth minded. I think what the meaning of a growth mindset is we're not worried with the end destination. We don't know what the end result is going to be. What we're here for is we're here for the journey. We're here for the experience. We're here to every single day pick something up that we can pack into us, into our arsenal, into our toolkit for life, so we can just navigate it a little bit more smoothly. Like we can just navigate life more smoothly the more developed we are. I'm curious, kind of your thoughts and take on what I just shared there.
the the growth mindset, the way that I see it is, it's similar to what you said, Frank. It is the desire in a way. I'm not sure. I'm going to kind of repeat what you were saying. I'm trying to think of something else to add, but nothing comes readily like
Yeah,
that.
no, 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 no,
Really,
no, no, no. That's great. I mean, I think we're in agreement on a lot of things here, and I mean that's fantastic. And obviously, that's why we're both knowledge brokers. That's why we're both pod. You know what I mean? Because this is kind of what we find joy and meaning out of.
absolutely. And the only thing I would add, because you said about we don't know what the destination is, and for sure we don't know it. It's not up to us. So it's important to realize that we will never know that, because the outcome, the destination is not up to us. But the steps that we will take on the path, that's what we can control, not where the path leads. That's it will be revealed to us.
Yeah. Going back a little bit into the conversation with something you had mentioned earlier when we were kind of discussing the spiritual path of your friend and then kind of your own journey, Greek Orthodox Christianity, never really prescribing to any specific, religious practices. But then you were very specific in um, dividing spirituality and religion. And I'm just curious if you can kind of just expand on the differences between the two and kind of how you see them supporting each other, working together, or are they just two completely different paths that people can be on, a spiritual path and then a religious path?
They're not different. They are maybe they are different approaches to something. For me, and I'm going to state clearly my own personal opinion. Spirituality is more the freedom to discover what the truth about spirituality is, or about the spirit. Religion, on the other hand, has a very specific, strict, or even dogmatic in many cases way of asking you to see things. They will say that this is how it is. And with religions, each of them has this message inside that this is the right religion, and therefore the other ones are the infidels, or maybe they have been mistranslated and miscommunicated over the years, because Jesus never said anything about that. So the message over the years, and I'm sure the other spiritual religious teachers had similar messages that were maybe distorted or miscommunicated through the centuries to become the way that it is now. So for me, it is very religion is very prescriptive. That these are, the Ten Commandments, and it is this and it is that. And if you don't follow that, there is the path to hell or whatever it is. So that is for me the difference, that as the way I see it anyway, that spirituality will not impose these rules as such. I feel more of a freedom to look for the answers myself without having to prescribe to a specific set of rules or principles. So that's, yeah, the essence of it, Frank.
Yeah, no,
I'm,
thank
I'm
you. Thank you
curious
for
to
sharing that.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, because I know we're probably on the opposite ends of this, but I'm not sure if I'm right or wrong. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would say, for me, I definitely don't, prescribe to a dogmatic religious practice. I do identify myself as a believer, as a Christian. I do believe in the physical resurrection of Jesus Christ, and I believe that He is the Son of God. I believe He is who He says He is. For me, my walk and my journey has been through relationship, though, relationship with our Father, relationship with Jesus Christ. And I think what I would get out of what you said is, I would probably say, for me, I see myself really taking those two worldviews. So maybe a dogmatic religious practice, and then more of the seeking your own path spiritual walk. And then I'm going to meet somewhere in the middle where I'm not following, dogmatic Christianity, but I do believe that Jesus is who He says He is. I believe in the physical resurrection. I've done a lot of research historically in around that. So for me, I know that brings me peace. That's what works for me. I'm not opposed to conversations in and around any of that. We've had very dogmatic Christians. We've gone down that conversation. We've had non-believers, agnostic. I think, yeah, we put our podcast in the Christian space, but one of the things that, maybe it falls into this superpower, though, is I'm able to, because I lived 35 years on one side of it, and now I've been 4 years on the other side. I'm able to bring people and have conversations around these things that a lot of Christians won't even get into, for whatever belief they have in around what it's going to do. So that's my take on it. I'm not here to tell anybody that is right. It works for me, and it's got me to the point where I am 39 years old, and when my head hits the pillow every single night, I go to sleep at peace. And for me, with the life that I lived for 35 years, going to bed at peace, in peace every single night, is one of the greatest accomplishments that I've had in my life. So knowing all that, that's where I fall around this conversation.
Yeah, and that's why I said I don't think there is a right or wrong way. It really depends on the person and what is right for each of us. Really, there is not everything works for everyone, and generally speaking, yeah.
Yeah. One thing I think that's going to be helpful. Thank you for that. I think that was a great great part of the conversation there. But one thing I wanted to make sure we do discuss here a little bit is, I think, one thing about your story here is, you had this career as a dentist, right? You were working in successful field, like you worked hard to achieve, the degrees and the credentials to be able to even do what you were doing. But then you had this pivot, right? And it's like you left this career behind you. I know there's going to be a lot of men that are hearing this today. Maybe they're in a similar place. They're like, yeah, we kind of already touched on this a little bit, but I want to go a little bit, zoom in a little bit more here. So if a guy's out there and he's like, yeah, I'm not happy in this career. I know there's something else out there for me, but I have all these responsibilities, right? I have a home, I have a family, I have everything that I'm responsible for. For you, what was that transition like in your journey? And then what are some things that people can maybe begin to do to maybe step into a calling without just up and leaving all of their responsibilities? Because a lot of men can't do that, right?
and it would be reckless. I mean, for anyone to say, there is many times it's called to say burn the bridges and follow your passion the next day, and providence will step in, and it's great, and it might happen. But what if it doesn't? So it's not very sensible to do it like that for me. And it was a transition, doing less of the previous work and more of the new one. So there was not a sudden point that I completely stopped one thing and started the other. So there was emerging, so cutting down on dentistry and putting more. And for me, it was important. I think for many people who are, have concerns about that, it's important, because unless you really know with absolute certainty what it is that you want to do instead, then it's a bit reckless to just go all in there to something that you're not even sure. So I prefer in cases like that, and that's what I did myself. I took a more, you know, um, incremental approach, or a bit more, you know, at the same time as I was trying to figure out, it's I don't want to be doing what I'm doing, but I wasn't sure of what what was there, because when you start looking at other options and possibilities, there will be 1,000 things that will probably pick your attention, or the shiny objects that you will see. And I think you need to pick one of them and follow it for at least a little while before you realize if this is the thing or there is something else. So, yeah, that was how I did it. It made sense to me. Yeah, I'm not saying that is the right way, but it was a gradual way for me.
Yeah,
It
no,
helped.
and I think that's I think that's great, and I think it kind of depends on where a man is at within his life. For
Mm.
me, my first step into entrepreneurship, I was 29 at the time. I think maybe I just turned 30. No, I think I was 20, 28 or 29. Not a ton of responsibility in life, like I knew that the corporate world wasn't going to be, so I burned the bridges and I went all in on entrepreneurship. And I did it a second time in my 30s as well, with my second company. Now with Rebuilt Recovery, which is my third, maybe my fourth company that I've started, I did it the other way though. I didn't burn the bridges, because a little bit older in life, had learned from some of the failures that I made in the past. So I kept my full-time job for the first 4 months when I was starting Rebuild Recovery, and was building the curriculum, was doing the podcast on the weekends and at night and all these things. And there was 6 months of downsized things. I cut expenses. I made these sacrifices to get us to the point where we are today. So I've experienced both, and I think it just kind of depends on where you are in life. If you're in your early 20s and you got a bright future ahead of you, try it, man. That you're at a point maybe within your life at that point where you can take some major risks, because you got a lot of years ahead of you. Those guys that are in their 30s though, and especially if you have family and other people that you're responsible for, probably would be wiser to maybe figure out how to slowly transition, just kind of like what you said. Start pulling back some of the hours there, start working overtime, start working on the weekends, start working at night to get the passion going. And then eventually, as long as you know exactly where it is you want to go and you trust the process and you stack, compounding effort over time, I believe we all get what we all get what we want. It's interesting. I heard this quote the other day. It's, figuring out what you want in life is the hard part. Getting it is easy. Like what you really want. And that really jumped out at me as something we kind of talked about at the beginning of the conversation.
No, I just wanted to say, you mentioned that that period of 6 months earlier that it took you to cut expenses, and I will say that it can be longer than that. So someone needs to be prepared. It might be 6 years. You never know how long it will. It was what we were saying earlier, that we can't really know where the path takes us. But as long as you know you're on the right path, it will take you there
Yeah. No,
eventually.
I had a decade of entrepreneur experience. I had, started and built multiple companies myself and worked as an operator inside of other companies as well that grew very quickly. So for me, it probably did happen a whole lot quicker because I had a set of skills, I had knowledge, I had abilities around starting different companies. So yeah, it probably would take a little bit longer than 6 months for most people. I want to kind of bring us here home a little bit and kind of make sure we're obviously respectful of everybody's time here today. Curious with you, you've had some amazing guests on your podcast. Just looking at the list of individuals you've been able to speak with, has there been one or two, guests that have really, outside of myself, that have really jumped out at you in terms of like, this was one of the best conversations that you've had on your show?
I will share a conversation that has not been published yet. And of course, I see with your big smile, obviously, yes, present company excluded. So I will speak about everyone else. Depending, of course, on when this episode airs, chances are that I will have reached my milestone episode 250. So that is for me a very important milestone, and it is a conversation that I've had with Dr. John DeMartini about mastery, life mastery, mind mastery, things that we touched on this conversation. So even though this, now that we're recording this, has not come out yet, I think by the time that the podcast is out, it will be available. So that's, the one that comes to mind immediately. Afterwards, Frank, there are so many. It would be difficult to pick. I can pick, but it's
Yeah,
difficult.
no, that's good. 250 episodes, man. Congrats. I mean, hats off from one podcaster to another. And Dr. DeMartini, man, he's one of the best in the world. Friend of the show here. We've had him on, working with his assistant right now to get him back for round two. So stick around, guys. We're looking forward to bringing John back on. But he's truly one of the best in the world. Well, Aggie, this has been incredible, brother. Tell everybody, if they want to check out your podcast. I know you have podcasting agency or company that you help people launch. So let everybody know where they can check out with you. And obviously, if they're interested in maybe launching and starting a podcast, where they can find you. And then we'll finish the conversation with the last question.
Thank you. So yes, my podcast is called Personal Development Mastery. You will find it anywhere you listen your podcasts for. And what you said about me, what I found after the years of doing podcasting is that I discovered a voice that I didn't know that I had before I did that over the years. So it became very important to me to help others to do something like that. And podcasting it can be done in a very, very simple way, which is usually rubbish, or you can do it in a proper way and make something that is quality out there. So yeah, I help people who want to launch a quality podcast, even if they're not sure of what the podcast will be about, but it is part of helping them to extract that out of themselves and really clarify what it is that they want to speak about and with what objective, and then take them through the process of creating it and launching it. And you can find all of that information in my website, which is my name, agikeramidas.com.
Awesome. And yeah, guys, we'll get that plug down. I mean, I can just speak from, my own experience, how much this podcast has transformed me, my life. I mean, an entire company has been birthed out of this. Many hundreds of men have been led to freedom from pornography. Thousands of men have been reached and inspired to take changes in other areas of their life. And for me, I feel that these conversations have led to the greatest amount of personal growth and self-development in me, right? Because I could read all the books behind me. I've done that. But I can also bring the author on and ask them the questions about where they were mentally when they were writing this book. And to me, that's more valuable as far as where I'm at in my kind of personal growth story. So yeah, guys, we'll get all that plugged down. Definitely reach out to Agi. Check out the Personal Development Mastery podcast. So Agi, as we bring today to a close, we have a last question we end every single episode here with. Obviously, the title of the show is The Superhuman Life. So how would Agi Keramidas define living a superhuman life?
Being it's the same as what you asked me earlier about mastery. Become master of your life and be all that you can be, whatever that is. And that is it has so much depth in it, but that is for me the superhuman life, really fulfilling your potential.
Incredible, brother. Thank you so much, guys. You heard it here. Be all that you can be. There's a calling. There's something living inside of you right now that the world needs, and it is your responsibility. And truthfully, I think that this is why we're here, is to find whatever that is inside and bring it out to share it with the world to make everybody else's life a little bit better. So Agi, thank you so much, together. Guys, if you're out there and you're getting value out of these conversations, we have seen some tremendous growth with our downloads, our audience size in the last couple of months, and it's all because of you. So if you want to support the show, you can help us by leaving us a 5-star rating and written review. But most importantly, if there's somebody in your life that is going through something, today's conversation can and will help them. Do us a favor, but do them the blessing by sharing this conversation with them. But for Agi, host of the Personal Development Mastery Podcast, your host here at the Superhuman Life, Frank Rich, we love you guys, and we'll see you next week.